I was 3 weeks away from my wedding when my parents asked me to give it to my sister. Not postpone it. Not change the date. They wanted me to give her the entire wedding. The venue. The decorations. The catering. Even the date I'd spent almost a year planning. At first, I thought they were joking. Then my mother said, "Your sister needs this more than you do." My sister was 24, single, and had recently moved back home after a breakup. I asked what any of that had to do with my wedding. My father looked at me and said, "She's pregnant." I just stared at him. My sister was pregnant. And apparently, my parents had decided that meant her situation was more important than mine. I told them absolutely not. I'd already paid deposits. Guests had booked flights. My fiancé and I had planned everything together. Then my mother said something that made me realize this wasn't really about the wedding. "She's going to need a family around her." I asked where the baby's father was. Nobody answered. My sister had apparently refused to tell anyone. That night, she came into my room crying. She said she didn't want to ruin my wedding. She said she'd never forgive herself if I gave everything up for her. For the first time that day, I felt relieved. Maybe my parents had overreacted. Maybe my sister wasn't expecting me to sacrifice everything. Then she grabbed my hand and whispered, "There's a reason I can't tell you who the father is." I asked why. She started crying harder. Then she said, "Because you know him." I thought she meant one of our family friends. I was wrong. When she finally told me who the father was, I couldn't breathe. Because it wasn't just someone I knew. It was someone who was supposed to be standing beside me on my wedding day. And suddenly, I understood exactly why my parents wanted my wedding so badly. The father was my fiancé's younger brother. For a few seconds, I genuinely couldn't understand what my sister was saying. I asked her to repeat it. She did. She had been secretly seeing him for months. And now she was pregnant. I asked if my fiancé knew. She shook her head. Neither did my parents at first. My sister said she'd found out about the pregnancy 2 weeks earlier and had been terrified. Then she told our parents. Instead of telling me, they came up with a plan. They wanted my sister to use my wedding as a way to announce the pregnancy to both families. I couldn't believe it. They had apparently decided that if everyone found out at the wedding, nobody would be able to make a scene. My wedding would become a family announcement. I called my fiancé immediately. He answered normally. I asked if his brother had told him anything strange recently. There was a long pause. Then he asked me why. I told him everything. The pregnancy. My sister. His brother. The wedding. He didn't speak for almost 30 seconds. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "That's impossible." I asked why. He told me his brother had been living in another city for the last 6 months. He couldn't have been seeing my sister during the time she claimed. I called my sister back. She insisted she was telling the truth. Then my fiancé asked me one question. "Are you sure she's pregnant?" I didn't know. So the next morning, I went to my sister's room. I asked her to show me the pregnancy test. She refused. I asked for the doctor's appointment. She refused that too. Then I noticed an envelope sitting on her desk. It had her name on it. I opened it. Inside was a medical report. She was pregnant. But there was something else on the report that made my stomach drop. The estimated conception date was completely different from the date she'd given us. My fiancé's brother couldn't have been the father. Someone else was. I confronted my sister. She finally admitted she had lied about the father. But she still wouldn't tell me who it really was. Then my fiancé called me. He said he'd just spoken to his brother. And his brother had told him something that changed the entire story. He said, I know exactly who got your sister pregnant. Then he gave my fiancé a name. A name neither of us expected. And when I heard it, I realized my parents hadn't been trying to protect my sister. They had been trying to protect someone else. The name was my father's. I actually laughed when my fiancé told me. I thought his brother was lying. There was no way. My father had always been strict with my sister, but he loved her. I called my fiancé's brother myself. He told me he'd discovered the truth accidentally. My sister had originally told him he was the father. But after he questioned the dates, he realized something didn't add up. He confronted her. That's when she admitted she'd been with someone else. Someone she couldn't name. He had seen a message on her phone. The message was from our mother. It said, "We'll handle this before the wedding." That was when everything fell apart. I went straight to my parents' house. I asked them who the father was. My mother started crying. My father said nothing. Finally, my sister walked into the room. She looked at all of us and said, "The father is someone from work." That's it. Not my father. Not my fiancé's brother. Someone from her office. But there was still a problem. Why had my parents wanted my wedding? My mother finally explained. The man my sister had been seeing was married. His wife had discovered the affair. He was refusing to acknowledge the pregnancy. My parents were terrified that the scandal would become public. They thought announcing the pregnancy at my wedding would force him to accept responsibility. And because my wedding would have hundreds of people there, they believed he wouldn't dare deny it publicly. They weren't trying to give my sister a wedding. They were trying to turn my wedding into a trap. I told them the wedding was cancelled. Not postponed. Cancelled. My fiancé agreed. We eventually decided to have a much smaller ceremony months later, away from both families. My sister had her baby. The father eventually admitted the child was his, but his marriage ended soon afterward. My parents apologized. But I couldn't forget what they'd done. They hadn't just tried to take my wedding. They had been willing to turn one of the most important days of my life into a public confrontation because it was convenient for them. And that's what changed my relationship with my family forever. I used to think family meant you sacrificed for each other. Now I think family means they shouldn't ask you to sacrifice something that was never theirs to take. Subscribe Vault Stories for more such stories.